C.S. Lewis is perhaps best known for the Chronicles of Narnia, but among his other writings, he wrote an autobiography called Surprised by Joy. In it, he describes many of the formative experiences of his life, particularly his pursuit of beauty and joy, as he found them in poetry, literature, and art. He pursued these things on their own merits, but eventually realized that they were really pointing to deeper realities and deeper truths. Lewis concludes that joy was valuable only as a pointer to something other and outer. And while that other was in doubt, the pointer naturally loomed large in my thoughts. In other words, Lewis is sharing that in the process of his conversion to Christianity, while he was unsure that God existed, the pursuit of joy made sense. When he became a Christian, joy had never had the kind of importance he once gave it. The pursuit of happiness and joy are merely pointers to the eternal joy offered through Jesus Christ. But my story did not start out with that realization. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Happiness is something we all want. However, we often do not really know how to pursue it. As a fairly unhappy individual myself, I hoped desperately that I could find a path to happiness for my senior year. More importantly, I had hoped that I could create and control my happiness. To some extent, I still hope that, but as it turns out, I cannot, by myself, obtain anything that will truly last forever. And I wish that I had come to that realization sooner, because the true happiness that comes solely from God is the one thing that I can control pursuing. My happiness comes from Him, and all I have to do is place my trust in that. Everyone longs for happiness or joy, but few of us ever achieve it. And that is why the pursuit of happiness through Jesus matters. I never would have found out where true happiness really is if I hadn't discovered all of the places that it is not. When I started out on this journey, I had one Bible verse at the forefront of my mind. Unfortunately, I lost track of it along the way and allowed other things to influence the way that I was thinking about happiness. God calls us to be glad and rejoice, and to be joyful in hope, and patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. And I forgot that. I stopped trusting God to be God, and to bring me some measure of the happiness my heart had longed for so long. Some of the most common quick fixes for happiness are increasing exercise, improving diet, regulating sleep, and meditation or journaling of some sort. Over the course of the past year, I have tried to resurrect my willpower to do those things, hoping desperately that they would provide the answers that I wanted. Initially, I tried fixing my diet. Many people with depression fall into bad eating patterns, and I was not accepted. I kept rigorous track of the things that I ate, when I ate them, how I felt after I ate them, etc. I certainly felt better about myself when I ate better, but that was because I was taking care of myself in a way that I hadn't prior. I enjoy cooking and baking, but even when I intended to make something healthy, I would end up baking cookies instead, which, as you probably can imagine, is not particularly conducive to clean eating habits. After a while, the rigors of trying to write down every single thing that I ate or drank throughout the day wore me down, and I gave up. Since then, I have started doing that again, although in a more reasonable way. But after I gave up trying to salvage my eating habits, I turned to changing my sleep schedule. What a realization. I need sleep as a teenager? Who would have guessed? As with most teenagers, my sleep habits were erratic, to say the least. No regular bedtime, eating in bed, inconsistent wake-up times ranging from 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. on weekends. As a result, I was constantly exhausted or ill, and felt just lousy all the time. It affected my eating habits even more, since I reached for things to fill the time when I couldn't sleep. In turn, my depression got worse. I stopped taking care of myself. I couldn't bring myself to get out of bed in the morning. and the exhaustion stayed with me. So around November, when my eating log stopped, I tried to fix my sleeping habits. Admittedly, I didn't do a terribly good job of it, and once school got canceled, the irregular schedule messed up my internal clock so badly that I was waking up at a different time every day. And that continues to be a struggle, but I am hopeful that even if it does not improve my happiness, that I will be able to regulate my sleep schedule and get enough sleep to improve my overall health. After I marginally fixed my sleeping problem, I decided to try working on my mental health, which is, of course, vastly more complicated than writing down what I was eating. Although this whole year has been filled with interesting attempts at something that is genuinely pretty uncomplicated. So I tried journaling my feelings, when I felt happier, when I didn't, the situations that caused them. Unfortunately, that didn't last long, because sometimes it's less painful to forget the memories than to go back and reflect on negative thoughts. In hindsight, I wish that I had stuck with this a little bit more, and will certainly be trying to do so again. All three of those things, diet, sleep, and exercise, mental health, all of those things were just precursors to the thing that I was dreading above all: exercising. I hate exercising. I don't like sweating and straining my body to do unnatural things, like lifting weights the size of elephants. But eventually I found exercise routines that were reasonable for me. And they were. But consistency is key, and it's hard to maintain motivation and stay consistent during the winter months. I did enjoy working out immensely, and as it turns out, spending my energy on exercising instead of on my phone helped me sleep much better. Again, I will definitely be trying to continue this. But once it became spring, I went out for the soccer team, excited to try something new, only to be literally everything was sorely disappointed when the season was lost. The only exception to continuing with exercise was that, as with everything else that I had tried, I didn't feel the happy that I wanted to feel. I felt better, certainly, and more positive, but I wasn't as gleefully happy as I wished. But the more that I've thought about it, the more I've realized that my attempts to improve various facets of my life were only leading me to the realization that what I was lacking was the willingness to truly take care of my body. When I realized that, it changed the way that I thought about happiness. I was doing a horrible job taking care of the body that God gave me, a body that is supposed to be a temple. And when I felt like I failed his charge, I decided that I needed to completely rearrange the way that I thought about my body and about my relationship with God. Amidst all of the things I did to try and control my happiness, I forgot that God was the only one who actually has that power. I can do everything in my power to improve my life, but relying on him is the only way to achieve my goal, which is happiness. And of course, eternal happiness can only be found in him. I was looking in the wrong places for happiness for the longest time, so I couldn't find it. But the hope I had in my heart to find happiness, and the realization that I need to let go and let God guide the way, helped me shift my focus from relying on myself to relying on God to provide what I truly need. An interesting fact that people generally don't know that they know is that happiness is, in part, genetic and is based on external factors. Upon learning that, everything about me made so much more sense. Not only was I hoping to control things when I should have been focusing on God, but my natural inclination was to search for external factors to provide that for me. And external factors are easily influenced. After discovering that, I dove a little further into the differences between happiness and joy. What I learned there was that I was looking for one when I should have been looking for the other. I was truly hoping for joy not happiness. One needs a good measure of both, but happiness is temporary, and joy has deeper roots in God and what He does in our lives. Happiness is psychological and determined largely by the external factors, like the ones that I strained so hard to reach. Whereas joy is a spiritual gift that, at least in principle, should not be based on external circumstances. God is the true source of joy. However cliche it might be to say, I want you to picture yourself as happy as you possibly could be, on top of the world, with an amount of happiness that overpowers any conceivable worry. Now, can you imagine obtaining that on your own? I did. And that's why I put myself through so many things in my pursuit of happiness. But after realizing that happiness is earthly and that joy is eternal, I began to focus on the things that God had given me that I had forgotten about. And that is one of the ways to increase joy, to remember and celebrate all of the things that God has done for me, and the small blessings of daily life, the moments I've had that were truly joyful and happy that I didn't take time to appreciate until they were gone. Living in the moment is much easier said than done, but it is a worthwhile pursuit. People, myself included, often take for granted the small pleasures of life and the joy that comes from them. So when the opportunity arises to Zoom with a little cousin, to sit and talk with a sibling, talk to a dear friend in the hospital who just got good news, snuggle with my little dog, or do any number of things, I cannot ignore that opportunity. The joy remains long after the event in memories. The nights I curled up with a blanket and lost myself in an amazing book or movie when I was little are forever ingrained in my memory. And I longed for moments like that again, and I still do hope for them. Even when all evidence is contrary, I will never give up the belief that there is enough good in this world to be happy about. Now I realize that I experience those beautiful, God-given things every day, only I'm too distracted to pay attention to them. There's so much good in this world, and I chose to ignore it. But never again. Life is worth living, and living well. And we need to make sure that we're around to see it and savor it, each and every minute of it. Because even in the moments when darkness overtakes us, God is a light that will never grow dim. The only everlasting joy is Him. Until then, I choose to see the good, even if it is small. That small good is a small joy that deserves to be remembered. No form of happiness that we create can be maintained for any extended length of time, but God's presence brings never-ending joy and happiness. I have always relied on myself to do things properly, not wanting to allow anyone to mess things up. And I continue to, and probably will, struggle with that for a long time to come. But as it turns out, I'm only human. I cannot create a magical sense of happiness any more than I can forever banish sadness from the world. God is the only one who can do those things. He creates life and love and happiness, and we need to make sure that we can see it. Eternal joy will come eventually to all who are followers of God, but we don't want to have to wait until the second coming to experience it. Joy comes from God, and although we can't make it happen, we can seek joy. Nothing that is sad will last forever. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. And you have to believe that with all your heart. Take the time to look at the little things of joy and recognize them as happy little gifts from God. And in the end, when we reach an eternity of happiness, like Tolkien says, all sad things that have ever happened will be made untrue.